Hi, everybody. We're just going to give everyone a few more seconds to get settled in, and we'll get started. All right. So good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for Velodyne Lidar's kickoff episode of our new digital learning series called Automation and Safety During COVID-19. We are super excited to have you guys here today. And I'm coming to you from Silicon Valley in California. I know there are a number of you coming from some pretty far away places, so it would be great if you just use that chat button at the bottom of your screen and let us know where you're tuning in from. I'll be your host this morning. A little bit about me. My name is Pamela Gauci, and I am the Senior Marketing Manager at Velodyne Lidar. I've been with Velodyne for almost 9 years and with Velodyne Lidar for over 3 years. And the main focus of what I do here is planning and managing our US events. And one of the things that I absolutely love about what I do is that I get to collaborate with people who are running some of the most fascinating companies out there today. And those are companies that are really trailblazing and shaping emerging markets. And they're using our sensors to do some really, really amazing things. Now, under normal circumstances, I get to collaborate in person. But like most of you, we are still under shelter-in-place orders here in California due to COVID-19. So like you, we are adapting and taking it digital. Now I do see, oh, very cool. I see somebody tuning in from Panama and Europe, and I see the East Coast of the US. So that is so cool. We're so happy to have you guys here today. Now, I am going to, in just a moment, go over the agenda so you know what to expect today. Before I do that, I just want to introduce my co-host, Mary Bachter. You won't really see her or hear from her, but she is in the background running some slides for me. So thank you so much for helping me out today, Mary. Now, we are going to start with a brief overview of Velodyne Lidar, and then move to a brief introduction for Knightscope and Stacy Stephens. Stacy is our featured guest today, so he's going to be talking to us about what he is doing with his robots to keep us all safe during this global pandemic. And then I'll move to an interview with Stacey, which will be the meat of the episode, but I'll save a few minutes for audience Q&A at the end. And if we don't get to your questions, no worries, because we'll be putting up contact information for both myself and Stacey at the end of the episode. So you can feel free to reach out to us anytime. And also we are recording this episode. So you can go to our Velodyne Lidar YouTube channel to take a look. Now, a little bit about Velodyne Lidar. Velodyne's founder, David Hall, invented real-time surround view LiDAR systems in 2005 as part of Velodyne Acoustics. Now, since then, we've developed and manufactured a full suite of sensor solutions. Velodyne is a global company, so we have offices all over the world in the US, Europe, and Asia. And we also have an advanced research facility located here in California in Alameda. And of course, our headquarters is in Silicon Valley, which is where I am coming to you from today. Now, most of the time when people think about Velodyne Lidar, they think about the automotive industry. And it's true that that is our largest market. However, our sensors are used in many, many other industries for a lot of different types of applications. So this slide shows you some of those industries. But for today's purposes, we are focused on unmanned security. Now here you see just a handful of our portfolio of sensor solutions. We do offer a number of additional types of sensors to this, and that's because our customers have many different types of needs depending upon how they're using our sensors. So we truly do offer a full suite of sensor solutions. Now Mary just showed you which of those is our puck, and the reason for that is because the puck is the sensor that powers all of Knightscope's robots. Now you can see some of those robots in this slide. You can also see Stacey, who joined us as a guest along with one of his robots at our CES booth. It feels like a lifetime ago, but it was actually just a few months ago. And you can see how the puck is integrated into the top of those robots. Now, human beings, we have 5 basic senses that allow us to experience the world around us in real time. And similar to humans, Knightscope robots have 5 types of sensors. Now, you're looking at another picture of a Knightscope robot, and that is a really timely picture because that robot is doing something that is directly related to the COVID-19 crisis. And we're going to be talking about what that robot is doing a little bit later in this episode. So I mentioned that those robots have 5 sensors, and one of those is a LiDAR sensor, specifically Velodyne Lidar's puck. And that sensor serves really as the eyes for the robot. So the sensor allows it to see a full 360-degree view of the environment with a focus on distance. So it's really utilizing the sensor's long range of 100 meters. And now I'm going to be introducing Stacy Stephens from Knightscope. He is the EVP and Chief Client Officer at Knightscope. Welcome, Stacy. Thank you so much for joining us here today to talk about security.
Thanks, Pam. Really appreciate you and Mary putting this together, and thanks for Velodyne for hosting us today.
Awesome, awesome. So I'm going to dive right into some questions. To begin, can you tell us a little bit about Knightscope?
Sure. So Knightscope was founded in 2013. It was done as a direct result of the shootings that took place at Sandy Hook and then subsequently the Boston bombings. I do have a background in law enforcement and public safety, started off as a street cop back in the late 90s. So I have an extensive background in law enforcement and public safety over 20 plus years now. And one of the things that those instances brought up was a lack of actionable intelligence or access to actionable intelligence. So Knightscope was formed to kind of fill those gaps. It wasn't intended to be a one-to-one replacement. It was intended to be an additional tool, for lack of a better way of putting it, to give people the ability to see what's going on in any particular environment and do so in real time.
So cool. And so Knightscope had a good sense of what was coming ahead of these lockdowns, and you were able to act quickly. Can you tell us a little bit about the custom messages you created? And that goes back to the picture that you saw earlier of the robot.
Of course. So when we saw all this coming around, obviously we were watching the global news, seeing what was happening in China, seeing what was happening in Italy and the like, and we anticipated that that was obviously going to be coming to the US. It was just spreading too fast. And so we started to look at different ways that we could utilize the robots that we have already across the entire country. And we wanted to find out if there was or look at different ways of delivering messages to people, because the robots do speak. And so we wanted to take advantage of that and deliver messages to people that was a little less ominous and a little less creepy feeling than I think some people felt about, being watched and being told, hey, you're too close together, or you need to wash your hands, things like that. So we put together a series of messages, sent them off to a professional voiceover agency, and then pushed those out to all of our robots at all of our client locations free of charge. And we allowed the client to select which messages they wanted to use. And then we also allowed them to select additional messages that were custom to their specific application. Are they a company that is completely closed off, so they don't want any visitors and they wanted to deliver those types of messages? Are they one that's open, but they wanted to be more cautious about who was coming in? So, hey, you have to wear a mask at this facility, things to that nature. And again, we were able to push that out to our clients, and the response was incredible.
So I do know Knightscope's mission is reducing crime and then making the US one of the safest countries in the world. Can you talk about how either the mission might have shifted or maybe the definition of the word safe has changed?
Yeah, I think it's more perception from the client's perspective than anything, because when we first started putting robots out into public places to address security, what we found was everybody was absolutely overwhelmed with this large shiny object. I mean, it's 5.5 feet tall, 3 feet wide, weighs about 400 pounds, so it's quite significant in stature. And what we found as the pandemic set in was people became less focused on the robot and the deterrence capabilities that it offered, and became more focused on the data and remote monitoring and what is your user interface and how do we access that if we're not able to go to our place of business. So it really has kind of shifted the perspective. which really for us is positive because the robot was always just a tool, and the data was really where the gold was as far as, again, providing that actionable intelligence.
Okay, and I do know that you were in Washington, D.C. at the beginning of all this lobbying in Congress. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So prior to the CARES Act, we were actually looking at some of the planned emergency stimulus funds as a result of COVID-19. We expected there to be an emphasis on existing autonomous robot companies and specifically being able to deliver security, health supplies, food, indoor, outdoor sanitation, and the like. So we wanted to make sure that we were a voice being heard in that, that we could talk about the benefits and the crime reduction that we were able to provide. Because in this particular pandemic, there was an inevitable shift in what was going to be happening with crime. So we wanted to make sure that we got ahead of that curve and we were able to talk to people about it.
So, and you did mention earlier your previous career in law enforcement. So that does make you uniquely qualified when it comes to public safety. Can you talk a little bit about that experience and about how it may shape your view of this crisis, or even how it affects how people view you when you're talking to them about security?
It's a unique skill set, I think, number one. It's also a unique client base because we have two different clients, really. We have the law enforcement side and we have the security side. And oddly enough, the security side predominantly is run by people who came out of law enforcement. So at a director level or chief security officer level, most of those people had a complete career in law enforcement, have retired and moved on and entered into the private sector. So when we go to have a conversation with somebody, if I was just a technologist, that conversation would go in an entirely different direction than me going in and sitting with them, because I understand the problems. We can talk the same language and the same shorthand, acronyms and the like. I mean, there's always industrial or industry related terminology that people know. And it helps me to relate to them on a much higher level. So those conversations go much better and we can speak to their actual problems and the solutions to those problems much quicker than somebody who's just saying, hey, I got this whiz bang technology and it's really pretty and it's gonna enhance your security program. So it definitely helps having that background. And also we have people on the team who come out of the military, long careers in military. I've got another SWAT commander from the East Coast who's on our team, and so it helps again to also formulate a plan for what are we going to do for the product and what the product actually performs and does on a daily basis.
Very cool. So and we talked about regulatory. The regulatory process with these kinds of technologies is pretty unique. So often tech is leading regulation. How do you think COVID-19 may affect that process moving forward? Do you think it could make it less of a challenge or make even the public, more open to these types of technologies?
So Knightscope's actually been around since 2013, as I said before. It's, in my mind, it's not necessarily an emerging technology since we actually commercialized in 2015. I mean, we've had robots running around the country 24/7, 365 in outdoor public environments for 5 years now. I do admit we're still in our infancy, but we've had the opportunity to see how the public is going to respond to this, and it's actually been overwhelmingly positive. I think if you just do a quick Google search on what's been going on since the pandemic, many more people are starting to see, okay, I can't go to work, so we need to figure out how to allow our business to survive. And one of the ways in which we can do that is through technology. So we've seen other companies out there who are producing robots of many different types that are now flourishing because they have an open opportunity to get in and help save a company. And that to me is tremendous because there's a lot of businesses that are being affected by this, and to know that they're affected in a negative way and perhaps we can bring some positivity to that is absolutely paramount.
And I will just mention, sir, interestingly enough, we're talking about things related specifically to COVID-19, but there was a New York Times article recently that reported that certain other types of sort of more don't know if you want to say normal crimes, have actually increased during the lockdown.
Yeah, so let's talk specifically about the stats put out by the NYPD. Major crimes, things like robberies, felonious assaults, grand larcenies, shootings, and the like, have come down 28.5%. That's pretty awesome. Unfortunately, if you look at burglaries and commercial properties, they've gone up 169%, which makes perfect sense. People who are doing crimes, 98% of those are crimes of opportunity. So they're looking for the easy score. And when you have a lot of people who are not showing up to work on every single day, and you have buildings that are empty, warehouses that are empty, and the like, obviously those crime numbers are going to go up. So the positive from our side is the people who have had our robots in place have not seen that. They've not witnessed any kind of increase in their property crimes, again, because they didn't have to reduce their security because it was running around completely autonomously.
Have the conversations with your customers changed at all during this crisis?
Primarily, as we talked about before, in really wanting to understand where the remote monitoring comes in. We just did a blog, as a matter of fact, not too long ago, which you can find on our website, that talks about remote monitoring and how that's going to become the new norm. People are now starting to look at, okay, this whole global pandemic was completely unexpected. One of my team members happens to be a certified protection professional, which is like the gold standard certification for security management. And he went through all of the volumes of books that's required to get that certification, not one mention of a pandemic. So this really caught people off guard and put them back on their heels. Now they're beginning to look, okay, it's unfortunate that we're probably going to see a resurgence of this come fall or winter of this year or next. And people are starting to go, okay, what can we do to start to prepare for that? And what else have we not thought about? So yes, it's definitely kind of changed the paradigm of where people are looking to deploy technologies in security.
So that sort of touches on the next question I was going to ask, is how it might have changed conversations within the security industry, not just with your customers.
Yeah, definitely within the security industry, people are starting to look differently at the technologies. I'll throw my former profession completely under the bus here for a moment. We as an organization are horrific at adopting new technologies. And that's primarily because the way that the law enforcement apparatus is built, we have a lot of budget pressures and the like. So getting new technologies is hard to do. Also, what typically happens is they wait to see them adopted in the private space first, see the successes that they're having before they go and try to sell it into the cities, counties, and states. Now people are starting to open their eyes and say, okay, we really don't have a choice. It's either put our police officers and our security guards at risk by having them engage in these types of activities, or perhaps taking a fully autonomous robot that's immune to this type of disease and put it into place. So it definitely has changed the way that they're viewing this.
And so we talk about, crisis response, but what about the long-term effects on the security industry? Do you think there will be long-term effects? What do you think that will look like?
So I most definitely do. Let me just talk about the industry in general. We have a 328 million person population here in the United States alone. There's over 17,000 law enforcement agencies, city, county, state, and federal. We have over 700,000 women and men sworn to protect that area. And we have about 1 million security professionals. There's nobody in charge of all of that, unfortunately. There's not a similar institution like the Department of Defense with a $700 billion budget who's looking to put that money into securing our country. Unfortunately, that's left to the hands of the 17,000 plus agencies on an individual basis. That's not scalable as we continue to grow in population, and there's this tremendous downward pressure on public safety and budgets. You have to be able to incorporate some kind of technology to be able to adapt to this. So the long-term ramifications are definitely there, and people are going to have to adapt and overcome to be able to continue to provide us with a really safe area to go shopping, go to school, or go to work.
So In terms of advocacy and steps the industry can take now to soften the economic blow of the crisis, what do you think we can and should be doing right now? Or is there something that we're not doing that you think we need to do?
So I think people need to start looking for avenues of opportunity, and that's exactly what Knightscope did. This is a huge untapped industry, and it's one that's way behind on keeping up with what's going on. I'll tell you just a little bit of something that's incredibly scary to me that most people really don't think about on a daily basis. The drug cartels have endless resources from a financial standpoint to go out and compete for the same type of jobs that the tech companies are hiring for in Silicon Valley. So they can go out and pay $300,000 to a software engineer to develop technology that can defeat anything that law enforcement is doing. A quick for example, one of the things that they do is they have a Waze app for criminals that helps them track the movements of law enforcement in real time so that they can plan their routes and get contraband where it needs to go. Okay, that scares me to death from a law enforcement standpoint, because that puts me and my fellow officers at risk. So if we start to look for those opportunities to allow law enforcement and public safety the tools necessary to combat that, then I think we're onto something. And anybody can go to my website at any time and look at how they can get involved. They can see the things that we're doing and opportunities that exist there, but most definitely suggest people investigate ways to get involved.
So we are going to throw it over to audience Q&A soon, Stacey, but I do have a final question for you. With everything we're all having to process right now, while we're practicing social distancing, while most of us are still under shelter-in-place rules that, as you mentioned earlier, are likely to change many times over the course of maybe a year and a half, possibly more, what's the key message you would want to leave people with regarding security in the foreseeable future?
I think the positive is that there are companies like Knightscope that are out there who are actively engaged in trying to make life safer for everyone. And the numerous ways in which we are able to do that, and ways that we're continuing to explore. I mean, sanitizing, looking for fever detection, things like that. Those are important things that we look to develop. But we also have to understand the importance of making sure that if we launch something like that, that we're not taking valuable time from the security practitioners and law enforcement with false alerts. So we have to fully bake this type of technology before it goes out, and not have this knee-jerk reaction of, hey, I'm going to buy the first thing that comes up because it's available. Make certain that any type of technology that is being deployed is fully tested, ready to go, and actually going to help us out.
Great. So now I have a ton of questions that I could still ask you, but we don't have too much time left, so I'm going to throw it to audience Q&A. So I do see a question about what kind of terrain can the robots cope with?
We have 3 different robots that are commercialized right now. We have a stationary, an indoor, and an outdoor. The indoor robot is obviously smooth level surfaces that it's going to be navigating in a warehouse, a shopping center, or something along those lines. The outdoor robot is relegated to parking lot type materials, so concrete, hard asphalt surfaces. It's not going to go off-road at this time. We've got a future product that we may end up going off-road with, but at the moment it's intended for perimeter protection on relatively smooth surfaces. We are able to patrol multi-level parking structures, so going up ramps is not an issue, but we're not going to go off curbs or upstairs or things to that nature.
So I do have a question asking about where you have robots deployed right now and how many robots?
So we have robots in all 4 time zones across the United States. We're in 15 different states and about to do our 16th state, which is Alaska. We just signed that contract this past week, so super excited about that.
That's awesome. What about supply chain interruptions? Have you had, like many other companies, supply chain interruptions during the crisis?
Fortunately, it's not hit us as hard as a lot of people, and primarily because over 85% of our content is US sourced. If you think about the application, security and law enforcement, you want to make certain that you're building as much of this as humanly possible in the United States. You have to build a security product in country for country. So it wouldn't make any sense for us to have a Chinese or Russian built robot doing security at a high-tech facility, for example. So we wanted to make sure that we had a lot of our content being sourced to US. And then the other content, we tend to maintain a significant amount of inventory to be able to build robots. We don't have finished goods inventory, but we do have the parts necessary to build robots as our clients order them.
So I do have a couple of questions about charging. So can the robot really be fully autonomous and also get recharged? And how long do those charges last?
Absolutely. I think if you claim that your robot is an autonomous robot and you have to go plug it in at night, it's not autonomous. So we are 100% autonomous. The robots monitor their own health. They monitor their own battery charge. They seek out the docking station when it's time to charge up. But it's not done so like an electric vehicle or your phone. So you're not running this until it's dead and then going and plugging it in. You want to make certain that you're maximizing the runtime and minimizing the charge time. So roughly speaking, about every 2.5 hours or so, the robot's going to seek out its docking station and go get a charge. That takes about 15 to 20 minutes. And the good thing is, even while it's charging, obviously save the fact that it's stationary, it's 100% functional. So all of this, the security sensors and the like, continue to operate even while it's docked.
Well, that's so cool. It really, truly is autonomous. A couple more questions. What types of customers do you work with? What kind of industries utilize or businesses utilize your robots?
Great question. Thank you for that one. It's actually not really confined to anything other than anywhere you would deploy a human physical security guard is an opportunity. Places where we are deployed right now: corporate campuses, airports, warehouses, automotive industry, hospitals, really big. We have numerous different hospitals, Texas, California, out on the East Coast as well. So we have a plethora of different types of industries, but again, it's really where you would deploy a physical security program.
Great, and so I think we have time for one more. Can you give us an example of a use case or an interesting success that you've had, an example of success with the robots?
Absolutely. So I love to talk about the first police department that actually used the technology. The city of Huntington Park out in California used this. They had a beautiful new park that they were experiencing crime in. And as soon as they started experiencing that, they looked at different technologies to help reduce that. For the period in 2018, between June and December, they had a benchmark of what the crimes were. Then they deployed a robot in 2019 and re-looked at the crime stats for the same period of time. And what they found was the calls for service went down 10%. The crime reports went down 46%. Citations went down 68%. And the incredible thing is the arrests went up 27% because now they had some evidentiary foundation to make those arrests. So those types of stats are incredible. I've sat in numerous different crime computer statistic meetings where people are looking at the effect that different types of technologies have. I've never seen anything like this.
Very cool. Well, I'd love to get to some more questions, but we are just about out of time. So if your question did not get answered today, no worries, because Mary just brought up a screen to show you contact information for both myself and Stacy. So if you have questions about security or Knightscope or Velodyne Lidar sensors, feel free to reach out to us directly. Again, this webinar is being recorded, so you can find it on Velodyne's YouTube channel. You can look for it next week. And I do want to thank you so much again, Stacy, for spending your morning with us. And we'd love to have you back. It'd be interesting to see where we are, towards the end of the year for round two, if you're willing to come back.
Absolutely love to. Thank you so much, and thank you guys for putting this on. It was great.
Awesome. And so in the meantime, if you're interested in learning more about automation and safety during COVID-19, Join us for our next episode that's taking place on Friday, May 22nd, same time, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And we will be joined by Dr. Ryan Chin, the CEO and co-founder of Optimus Ride. And he will be talking to us about the work Optimus Ride is currently doing with COVID-19 crisis response. In the meantime, thank you everybody so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time.